In the heart of New York City, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and streets buzzed with life, there was a small diner that stood quietly on a corner. It wasn't fancy or flashy. It didn't have neon signs or expensive menus, but it had something special. Charm. The kind of charm that came from mismatched chairs, faded wallpaper, and coffee that tasted like home. This little diner was where our story begins. Every day people poured in and out of this cozy spot. Businessmen rushed through breakfast before heading to their offices. Tourists snapped pictures of pancakes stacked high, and regulars sat at the counter exchanging stories about their lives. Among them worked a young woman who always greeted everyone with a warm smile despite carrying her own share of struggles. She was 8 months pregnant, visibly tired, but determined, balancing trays full of food while navigating between tables. Her shift started early in the morning and ended late at night. Most days she barely had time to sit down, let alone think about herself. Life hadn't been easy for her. Things were tough since she dropped out of college after discovering she was expecting a baby. Her part-time office job disappeared when morning sickness made it impossible to keep up. Now she relied solely on tips from customers to make ends meet. Every penny counted as she prepared for the arrival of her child. On this particular afternoon, the diner was bustling as usual. Conversations filled the air, forks clinked against plates, and laughter echoed across the room. The young waitress moved briskly, refilling cups of coffee and jotting down orders without missing a beat. But today felt different somehow. There was an energy in the air she couldn't quite place. Maybe it was because of the way sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden streaks onto the wooden floors. Or maybe it was because someone walked into the diner who would change everything. She didn't notice him right away. He slipped in quietly, almost blending into the crowd. Dressed casually in jeans and a plain sweater, he didn't scream wealth or fame. Yet there was something about the way he carried himself, an aura of confidence mixed with humility, that set him apart. He chose a seat by the window, pulled out his phone, and glanced around the room as if taking it all in. When the waitress finally approached his table to take his order, her breath caught in her throat. That face, those eyes, they were unmistakable. It was him. A billionaire whose name dominated headlines and whose companies revolutionized industries. What could someone like him possibly be doing here, in this tiny diner, surrounded by ordinary people leading ordinary lives? For a moment she froze, unsure of what to say. Should she even speak to him? Would he even acknowledge her? Before she could overthink it, he looked up and smiled, a genuine, disarming smile that put her at ease. "Hi," he said softly, his voice calm and friendly. "I'll just have some water and the grilled chicken sandwich." Relieved by his down-to-earth demeanor, she nodded quickly, scribbled down his order, and hurried back to the kitchen. As she worked, her mind raced. Why was he here? Was he slumming it for fun? Did he lose a bet? None of it made sense. For the next hour, she stole glances at him whenever she could. He sat there sipping water, scrolling through his phone, and occasionally looking out the window. There was no entourage, no security detail, no sign of arrogance. Just a man enjoying a quiet meal in a humble diner. When the time came to bring him his check, her hands trembled slightly. She placed it on the table and waited nervously for him to reach for his wallet. Instead, he looked up at her, met her gaze, and handed her $100 bill. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "You're doing great work." His words hit her like a wave, unexpected yet deeply comforting. She mumbled a shy, "Thank you," and walked away, tucking the generous tip into her apron pocket. That evening, as she closed up the diner and headed home, her thoughts lingered on the mysterious billionaire. Who was he really? And why did he seem so different from what she imagined? Little did she know, this chance encounter was only the beginning of a story that would alter the course of her life forever. The days that followed felt like a blur for the young waitress. Her life was a whirlwind of long hours, endless tasks, and the constant ache in her back from carrying heavy trays. But despite the exhaustion, she couldn't stop thinking about the man who had walked into the diner that day, the billionaire. His face, his voice, the way he had smiled at her. It all lingered in her mind like a song she couldn't forget. She told herself it was silly to dwell on it. After all, he was just another customer, wasn't he? People came and went from the diner every day, and she rarely gave them a second thought once they left. But something about him was different. Maybe it was the fact that he didn't act like the rich and famous person everyone expected him to be. No flashy cars, no entourage, no attitude. Just a quiet, unassuming man enjoying a simple meal. That kind of humility stuck with her. A week passed and life went on as usual. The diner was its usual self, busy, noisy, and full of energy. One afternoon, as she was clearing a table near the door, she glanced up and froze. There he was again. The same casual clothes, the same calm demeanor, the same warm smile. He stepped inside, scanned the room briefly, and then headed straight for a booth near the counter. Her heart skipped a beat. Was he really here again? Why would someone like him choose this little diner over the countless upscale restaurants in the city? She hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should she approach him? Should she let one of the other waitresses take his order? But before she could decide, he caught her eye and waved her over. "Hey," he said when she reached his table, his tone as friendly as it had been the first time. "Mind if I sit here?" He gestured to the booth, almost as if he needed permission. She blinked, surprised by the question. Most customers didn't bother asking. They just sat wherever they wanted. But there was something so polite about the way he spoke, so respectful, that it made her feel valued in a way she hadn't in a long time. "Of course," she replied quickly, forcing a smile. "What can I get you?" He ordered the same thing he'd had before, a grilled chicken sandwich and water, and thanked her warmly when she brought it over. As she turned to leave, he stopped her. "How's everything going?" he asked, his voice soft but sincere. She paused, unsure of how to respond. It wasn't the kind of question people usually asked her. Most customers barely looked up from their phones or muttered a quick thank you when she refilled their drinks. But this man, he seemed genuinely interested in her answer. It's good," she stammered, fidgeting with the notepad in her hand. "Just busy, you know." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I can imagine. You must have your hands full." He glanced down at her baby bump, his gaze lingering for a moment before meeting her eyes again. "When are you due?" She wasn't used to strangers asking personal questions, especially not ones like this. But there was no judgment in his voice, no prying curiosity, just kindness. So against her better judgment, she answered. "About a month," she said quietly. "That's exciting," he replied, smiling. "First kid?" She nodded, feeling a lump rise in her throat. Exciting wasn't exactly the word she'd used to describe it. Scary, overwhelming, exhausting, those were more accurate, but she didn't say any of that. Instead, she forced another smile and excused herself, heading back to the kitchen to check on the orders. For the rest of his visit, she tried not to stare too much. Every now and then, though, she found herself glancing at him out of the corner of her eye. He sat there quietly, scrolling through his phone, sipping his water, occasionally looking around the room as if soaking it all in. There was an ease about him, a simplicity that made him seem almost normal. Like he belonged here in this tiny diner, surrounded by ordinary people living ordinary lives. When it came time to bring him his check, she hesitated. Part of her wondered if he'd leave another generous tip like last time, not because she was greedy, but because she needed it. Every extra dollar helped, especially now, when diapers and baby clothes and hospital bills loomed ahead. Sure enough, when she placed the bill on the table, he handed her another $100 bill. "You're doing great work," he said softly, his words echoing what he'd told her before. This time she didn't mumble a quick thank you and rush away. Instead, she stood there for a moment, meeting his gaze. "Why do you keep coming here?" she blurted out, surprising even herself. He chuckled lightly, not offended by the question. "Because I like it here," he said simply. "It reminds me of simpler times, and besides," he paused, studying her face, "you remind me of someone." "Who?" she asked, unable to hide her curiosity. He smiled faintly, almost wistfully. Me, when I was younger, working hard, trying to build a better life despite the odds. His words hit her like a punch to the gut. For the first time, she realized, he saw her, not just as a waitress, not just as another face in the crowd, but as a person. Someone with dreams and struggles and hopes for the future. Before she could respond, he stood up, leaving a few bills on the table along with the tip. "See you soon," he said, giving her a small wave before walking out the door. As she watched him go, her mind raced. What did he mean? See you soon? Was he just being polite? Or did he actually plan to come back? And why did he keep saying things that made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had? That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. Something she couldn't quite put into words yet. All she knew was that this man, this billionaire who had walked into her life so unexpectedly, wasn't done surprising her. Little did she know their next meeting would change everything. The days that followed were a mix of anticipation and disbelief. The young waitress couldn't stop thinking about the billionaire who kept showing up at the diner. Every time the door jingled, her heart skipped a beat, wondering if it was him walking in again. She told herself not to get her hopes up, after all, he was just a customer. But deep down she couldn't shake the feeling that something unusual was happening. True to his word, he returned. Not the very next day, but a few days later. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind where the diner wasn't too crowded, and the hum of conversation blended with the soft clinking of forks against plates. She was wiping down a table near the window when she saw him step inside. Her stomach flipped, but she quickly composed herself, pretending to focus on her work as he made his way to the counter. This time, he didn't sit by the window. Instead, he chose a booth near the back, almost as if he wanted some privacy. When she approached his table, he greeted her with that same warm smile that always seemed to put her at ease. "Hey," he said, his voice calm and familiar. "How are you? Holding up?" It was such a simple question, but it caught her off guard. Most people didn't ask how she was doing. They asked about their orders, their bills, or sometimes even complained about the service. But this man, he cared enough to check in on her. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of how much to share. Finally, she shrugged and said, "I'm okay. Just tired, you know?" He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Of course, you've got a lot on your plate." He glanced down at her belly, which had grown noticeably since their last meeting. "And you're getting closer. How's everything going with that?" She sighed, gripping the edge of her notepad tightly. For a brief second, she considered brushing him off with a generic answer like, "Fine," or "Good." But there was something about the way he looked at her, like he genuinely wanted to understand, that made her drop her guard. "It's hard," she admitted softly. "I mean, I'm excited to meet my baby, but I'm scared too. Scared I won't be able to give them what they need." Her words hung in the air between them, raw and honest. She immediately regretted saying so much, worried she'd come across as weak or ungrateful. But instead of judging her, he leaned back in his seat, his gaze steady and kind. "That's completely normal," he said gently. "Becoming a parent is one of the biggest challenges anyone can face. But you seem like someone who's strong enough to handle it." His words surprised her. No one had ever called her strong before. Sure, she worked hard, and she did her best to keep moving forward despite the odds stacked against her, but she never thought of herself as particularly resilient. Yet here was this man, this stranger who barely knew her, telling her she had what it took to succeed. It made her chest tighten, not out of sadness, but out of something else. Hope, maybe. They ended up talking longer than either of them expected. He ordered his usual sandwich and water, but they spent most of the meal chatting. At first she was hesitant, answering his questions with short, guarded responses. But as the conversation went on, she found herself opening up more and more. She told him about dropping out of college, losing her part-time job, and struggling to make ends meet while preparing for her baby's arrival. She talked about her fears of being a single parent and her dreams of going back to school someday, even though it felt impossible right now. To her surprise, he listened intently, nodding along and occasionally asking follow-up questions. There was no pity in his eyes, no condescension, just genuine interest and understanding. By the time their conversation wound down, she felt lighter, as though sharing her burdens with someone who truly cared had lifted a weight off her shoulders. Before leaving, he handed her another generous tip, a crisp $100 bill, and thanked her for her honesty. "You're stronger than you think," he said softly. "Don't forget that." As she watched him walk out the door, she realized something. This wasn't just a random act of kindness. This man wasn't simply stopping by for a sandwich. He was reaching out, connecting with her in a way that felt meaningful and intentional. And though she still didn't fully understand why, she couldn't deny the impact he was having on her life. Over the next few weeks, he continued visiting the diner. Sometimes it was once a week, other times it was every couple of days. Each time they picked up right where they left off, talking about everything from her plans for the future to his own experiences growing up. He shared stories about his early days, how he started with nothing, worked multiple jobs, and faced countless setbacks before achieving success. His humility and vulnerability struck a chord with her, making him feel less like a billionaire and more like a friend. One evening, after the diner had emptied out and she was cleaning up, he lingered longer than usual. Instead of heading straight for the door, he sat at the counter, sipping a cup of coffee and watching her move around the room. When she finally joined him, he turned to her with a serious expression. "I want to ask you something," he said, his tone cautious but firm. "Do you trust me?" The question caught her off guard. Trust wasn't something she gave easily, especially to people she didn't know well. But over the past few weeks, he had proven himself to be reliable, compassionate, and sincere. So, after a moment of hesitation, she nodded. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I think I do." He smiled, but it wasn't the cheerful grin she was used to seeing. This one was softer, tinged with something deeper. Resolve, perhaps. "Good," he said, "because I have an idea, something that might help you, but I need you to hear me out before you say anything." Her pulse quickened. What could he possibly mean? Was he offering advice? A job? She braced herself for whatever was coming next, unsure if she was ready for it. What happened next would change her life forever. The young waitress stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. His words hung in the air like a question mark, heavy and full of possibility. "An idea?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "What kind of idea?" He took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts before speaking. Then he leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the counter. His expression was serious but warm, the kind that made you feel like whatever he was about to say came from a place of genuine care. "I've been watching you these past few weeks," he began slowly, choosing his words carefully. "And I can see how hard you're working. Not just here at the diner, but for your baby, for your future. You remind me so much of myself when I was younger. Hustling, doing whatever it takes to make ends meet, dreaming of something better." She nodded, unsure where this was going, but feeling a strange sense of pride at his words. No one had ever compared her to someone successful before. It felt surreal, like hearing a compliment she didn't quite believe yet. "I want to help you," he continued, his tone steady and sincere. "Not because I pity you or think you need saving, but because I believe in you. I think you have what it takes to build a great life for yourself and your child, and I'd like to give you the tools to do that." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she forgot how to breathe. Help? What did he mean by help? Was he offering money? Advice? A job? Her mind raced with possibilities, each one more overwhelming than the last. "I'm not talking about charity," he added quickly, sensing her hesitation. "This isn't about handing you something and walking away. This is an opportunity, an investment in your future. If you're willing to put in the work, I'll support you every step of the way." She swallowed hard, her throat dry despite the glass of water sitting untouched beside her. What are you saying exactly? She managed to ask, her voice trembling. He smiled faintly, as if he understood how overwhelming this must feel. Here's what I'm proposing, he said, leaning back slightly. I'll cover your education, any school you choose, any program that interests you. Whether it's nursing, business, teaching, whatever you want to pursue, I'll pay for it. I'll also set up monthly stipends to cover your living expenses while you study. And once your baby arrives, I'll make sure you have access to resources like childcare assistance and medical coverage. Her jaw dropped. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This wasn't just help. It was life-changing support, the kind of thing people dreamed about but never expected to happen to them. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision as she tried to process his words. Why would you do that? She whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of emotion. You don't even know me. He reached across the counter, placing a gentle hand over hers. Because everyone deserves a chance, he said simply, and because I see potential in you. You're strong, determined, and resilient. Those are qualities that can take you far if given the right opportunities. She pulled her hand away instinctively, not out of rejection, but because she needed space to think. Her mind was spinning, trying to reconcile the reality of her situation with the enormity of his offer. On one hand, it sounded too good to be true, a miracle wrapped in kindness. On the other hand, it felt almost dangerous, like accepting it might come with strings attached she couldn't see yet. What's the catch? She asked finally, her voice firmer now. There has to be something you want in return. His expression softened, and he shook his head. No catch, he said firmly. I don't expect anything from you. This is purely about giving you a chance to succeed. All I ask is that you use this opportunity wisely, to chase your dreams and create a better future for yourself and your child. She wanted to trust him. She really did. Over the past few weeks, he had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. He had listened to her, encouraged her, and treated her like a person rather than just another face in the crowd. Yet part of her still hesitated. Could she really accept such a generous offer without feeling like she owed him something? I need time to think, she said after a long pause, her voice barely audible. This is a lot to take in. He nodded, understanding written all over his face. Of course, he replied gently. Take all the time you need. Just promise me one thing, that you'll consider it seriously. Not for my sake, but for yours. With that, he stood up, leaving a few bills on the counter along with another generous tip. Before walking out the door, he turned back to look at her. You deserve this, he said softly. Don't let fear or doubt stop you from taking it. As the door closed behind him, she sank onto a stool, her legs too weak to hold her upright anymore. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, gratitude, confusion, excitement, and fear, all swirling together like storm clouds. What should she do? Should she accept his offer and risk stepping into the unknown? Or should she turn it down and continue struggling on her own? For hours she sat there, replaying their conversation in her head. Every word he had said echoed in her mind, each one carrying a weight she couldn't ignore. Finally, as the first rays of sunlight peeked through the window, she made a decision. Whatever doubts she had, whatever fears held her back, she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't let this chance slip away. The next day, when he returned to the diner, she was ready. The next morning, the young waitress woke up with a knot in her stomach. Her decision felt clear in her mind, but the weight of it pressed down on her chest. She had spent hours tossing and turning the night before, replaying every conversation she'd had with the billionaire. His words echoed in her head, gentle, encouraging, sincere, but so did her own doubts. Was she making the right choice? Could she trust him completely? And what would people think if they found out? She knew she couldn't ignore the opportunity he was offering. It wasn't just about her anymore, it was about her baby too. This chance could change their lives forever. But accepting help from someone else, especially someone as powerful and wealthy as him, felt like admitting defeat. Like saying she couldn't do it on her own. That thought stung, even though she knew deep down that no one could blame her for needing support. Before heading to work, she called her best friend, the one person who always gave honest advice without sugarcoating anything. After explaining everything, the billionaire's visits, his offer, her fears, she waited anxiously for a response. "You're kidding me, right?" her friend said after a long pause. "This is literally your dream coming true. Why are you even hesitating?" "I don't know," she admitted, pacing back and forth in her tiny apartment. "It feels, I don't know, weird. Like, why would he do this for me? What does he get out of it?" Her friend sighed, the sound carrying through the phone line. "Maybe he doesn't want anything out of it. Some people just like helping others, you know? Besides, isn't this exactly what you've been praying for? A way to finish school, take care of your baby, and finally breathe a little easier?" She stopped pacing and sank onto the edge of her bed. Her friend was right. It was what she'd been praying for. Still, the idea of relying on someone else made her uneasy. She hated feeling indebted, even if the person offering help insisted there were no strings attached. "Just promise me one thing," her friend said firmly. "Don't let pride stand in your way. This isn't charity. It's an opportunity. Take it." Those words stuck with her as she got ready for her shift at the diner. By the time she tied her apron around her waist and stepped behind the counter, she felt more resolved. She'd talk to him today, tell him she was ready to accept his offer. But first, she needed answers. Real ones. She couldn't move forward until she understood his intentions fully. As fate would have it, he walked into the diner not long after she arrived. He looked the same as always, calm, unassuming, dressed casually despite his billions. When their eyes met, he smiled warmly, and she felt a flicker of relief. If nothing else, she trusted his sincerity. After taking his usual order, a grilled chicken sandwich and water, she approached him with a mix of nerves and determination. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. He nodded, setting down his fork. "Of course. Is everything okay?" She slid into the booth across from him, clutching her notepad tightly. For a moment, she just stared at him, searching his face for any hint of ulterior motives. But all she saw was kindness, the same kindness he'd shown her since their very first meeting. "I've thought about what you said," she began, her voice soft but clear. "About helping me with school and everything else. And I'm willing to accept your offer. But only if you answer one question honestly." He leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. "Ask me anything." "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her gaze locking onto his. "I mean, really, why me? Out of everyone in the world, why would you choose to help someone like me?" For a moment, he didn't respond. He looked down at his plate, as if gathering his thoughts, then met her eyes again. "Because I see myself in you," he said simply. "When I was younger, I worked 3 jobs just to scrape by. I dreamed of something better, but I didn't have anyone to guide me or give me a leg up. If someone had offered me the kind of support I'm offering you, it would have changed my life sooner." He paused, his tone growing softer. "And because I believe in paying it forward. Success doesn't mean much if you can't use it to make someone else's life better. You're working harder than most people I know, and you deserve a chance to succeed. That's all there is to it." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. His words hit her like a wave, washing away the last of her doubts. He wasn't trying to manipulate her or gain anything for himself. He genuinely wanted to help. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do it. Thank you." A slow smile spread across his face, lighting up his features. "You won't regret it," he promised. "We'll figure everything out together, schools, finances, childcare. Whatever you need, I'll make sure you have it." Over the next few days, they sat down to discuss the details. He helped her, research programs and universities, encouraged her to apply to schools she never thought she'd qualify for, and assured her that money wouldn't be an obstacle. He set up a trust fund for her baby, ensuring they'd have financial security no matter what happened. Every step of the way, he treated her like an equal, never once making her feel small or insignificant. But it wasn't just about the practical stuff. Their conversations shifted too. They talked less about struggles and fears and more about dreams and goals. She shared her hopes of becoming a nurse, of building a stable life for her child, of proving to herself that she could rise above her circumstances. He listened intently, nodding along and offering encouragement whenever she doubted herself. By the time she submitted her applications, she felt like a different person. The constant weight of worry had lifted, replaced by a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where things weren't so hard. A future where she could thrive instead of just survive. 1. Evening, as they sat in the diner going over acceptance letters from various schools, he turned to her with a proud smile. "You're going to do amazing things," he said. "I can already tell." She smiled back, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." He shook his head, dismissing her thanks. "This is all you. I'm just here to cheer you on." As she watched him leave the diner that night, she realized something important. This wasn't just about changing her life. It was about learning to trust again, to trust others, to trust herself, and to believe that sometimes miracles really do happen. Months turned into years, and life began to unfold in ways the young waitress had once only dreamed of. The billionaire's support wasn't just a lifeline. It was a catalyst that set her on a path she never thought possible. With his help, she enrolled in nursing school, balancing late-night study sessions with caring for her newborn baby. At first, it felt overwhelming, like juggling too many balls at once. But every time doubt crept in, she remembered his words. "You're stronger than you think." And somehow those simple words kept her going. Her days were far from easy. Mornings started early, feeding and changing her baby before rushing off to classes. Nights stretched long, filled with textbooks and flashcards while her little one slept peacefully beside her. There were moments when exhaustion threatened to pull her under, when the weight of responsibility made her wonder if she could keep going. But then she'd look at her child, the tiny face that inspired her to fight for something better, and find the strength to push through. The billionaire stayed true to his promise, offering guidance whenever she needed it but never hovering or controlling. He became more than just a benefactor. He became a mentor, a steady presence cheering her on from the sidelines. Every now and then, they'd meet at the diner where their journey began, sharing updates over coffee and sandwiches. She told him about her victories, passing exams, mastering difficult skills, earning praise from professors, and he listened with genuine pride, always reminding her how far she'd come. One day, during her final year of nursing school, she received an email that brought tears streaming down her face. It was an acceptance letter from a prestigious hospital program, one she'd applied to almost on a whim, convinced she wouldn't stand a chance. Yet here it was, confirming what he had believed all along. She was capable of greatness. She called him immediately, her voice trembling with excitement. "I got in," she exclaimed, barely able to contain her joy. "I can't believe it, I actually got in." On the other end of the line, she could hear the smile in his voice. "Of course you did," he said warmly. "I knew you would." When graduation day finally arrived, she stood among her classmates wearing a cap and gown that symbolized years of hard work and sacrifice. Her baby, now a toddler, clapped enthusiastically from the audience, completely unaware of the significance of the moment but proud nonetheless. As she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she scanned the crowd, spotting him sitting near the back. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her a subtle nod, his expression filled with quiet admiration. Afterward, they celebrated together, at the diner naturally. It had become their tradition, a way of honoring where it all began. Over slices of cake and cups of coffee, they reflected on the journey they'd shared. "Do you remember the first time we met?" she asked, laughing softly. "I was so nervous around you." He chuckled, shaking his head. "And now look at you. You're unstoppable. I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said earnestly, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it." "You don't owe me anything," he replied firmly. "This is your success, plain and simple. I just gave you the tools, you built the rest." Those words stayed with her long after their celebration ended. They reminded her that while his generosity had opened doors, it was her determination and resilience that carried her through. She had transformed not just her circumstances but also her mindset, learning to see herself as someone worthy of opportunity and capable of achieving greatness. As the years went by, she flourished in her career, quickly earning a reputation as a compassionate and skilled nurse. Her patients adored her, colleagues respected her, and supervisors praised her dedication. Meanwhile, her child grew up surrounded by love, stability, and opportunities their mother had worked tirelessly to provide. Together they created a life full of hope and possibility, a stark contrast to the uncertainty they once faced. Though their lives took different directions, the bond between her and the billionaire remained strong. He continued to check in, occasionally sending messages of encouragement or stopping by the diner unannounced to catch up. Their conversations evolved over time, shifting from practical matters to deeper reflections on life, purpose, and gratitude. She often marveled at how fate had brought them together, two strangers whose paths might never have crossed if not for a random visit to a humble diner. Looking back, she realized their story was about more than kindness or generosity. It was about connection, the kind that transcends wealth, status, or circumstance. It was about seeing someone for who they truly are and believing in their potential, even when they struggle to believe in themselves. Most importantly, it was about the ripple effect of compassion, how one act of goodwill could transform not just one life, but countless others. Years later, when she stood in front of a group of students at a local community center sharing her journey and encouraging them to pursue their dreams, she often thought of him. "There's no such thing as impossible," she'd tell them, her voice steady and confident. "Sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you to change everything." And deep down, she hoped that somewhere out there, another young woman working tirelessly against all odds might hear those words and find the courage to keep going. Because sometimes life surprises us in the most unexpected ways, with second chances, unlikely friendships, and opportunities we never saw coming.